Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Metroid Other M. In the last we took care of our first boss fight, the Brook Mass, and now that we've turned the power back onto most of the bottle ship, we're gonna go report back to Adam, which means more cutscenes.
Samus, go through the hatch on your right and head towards Sector 1. Lyle went ahead to secure a route to a facility of interest. I'll leave you to survey Sector 1.
Thankfully, that cutscene's a lot shorter. By and large, this is the first part of the LP that I'd say is more game than cutscene. We have a couple minutes here and there, but we're going to be seeing a lot more. That's a power bomb door. We're not using that until more or less the very end of the game. And a detail I like, we have a map of the bottle ship on this screen right here. It's very simple. There's nothing really to it. But I like it because it oddly reminds me of the map from Super Metroid that shows up when you boot the game up after you've died. I appreciate that. And now we want to head over towards the sector elevators. Before we get there, though, you want to stop right about here and look up this duct to see one of those hives we took care of last part. We can shoot this one with some missiles. This will spawn enemies later in the game. We want to wall jump up there because a missile tank is going to be waiting for us up here. I should note, though, you want to grab this now as well. There's one opportunity, really, where you can get this again later on after we get certain power-ups and you want to backtrack for it. One of the only real backtracks the game has, optionally. If you don't get this now, or in that exact instance, you're not getting that until the very end of the game. That is either one of your first items, or your very last item. You gotta get that now if you want to. Cool, it's easy to miss. It is easy to miss. I think I've had playthroughs where I accidentally get the ending total percent at like 99 just because I forgot to grab that. Because I did used to play this game quite a bit when it was new. I remember playing this game through 2 or 3 times in a row. I'll go over a specific instance of that when we're in a later portion of Sector 1 even. But more on that when we get there. Before we head on over to the door on the bottom floor here, we want to platform up this room, taking care of these. I think these enemies are called like Bull or something. Because a new item awaits us at the top of this room. And I'm torn on this new item type. In some regards, I think it's nice because it means they might be able to give other power-ups more focus in terms of the amounts you can get. And it means you actively have to search for more rewards in certain cases. But also, I feel it kind of bloats out. I don't want to say bloats out the item total, but definitely makes it feel like they didn't want you just getting too much of a certain thing. Because this is an energy part. Energy parts are fractions of energy tanks. They're heart pieces from The Legend of Zelda, more or less. You collect 4 of them, you get a new energy tank. I believe there are 12 of those in the game total, between the 3 or so energy tanks that are locked behind it. Usually you find energy tanks more often on their own, but if you want a good amount of health throughout the game, you're gonna want to find the energy parts as well. Even though, something I should mention, concentration doesn't just restore your missiles. I think I alluded to this slightly another part ago or something like that. When you're at critical health, which you'll know you are because the screen is flashing red, the meter on the top left looks red, you're like between 0 and 15 health in most cases. You can use concentration there to recover your health as well. It's the only time that you recover health outside of a save station. With that said, you can only do that when you're at critical health, and it only restores a single energy tank. It puts you back up to 99, maybe 100-ish. Welcome to the main elevator. Other M's level structure is very similar to Metroid Fusion. In fact, there's a lot of similarities to Fusion in this game, in that we're separated into 3 main sectors for the levels, and then we just kind of interconnect them through other methods.
This elevator is bound for Sector 1. A Level 3 warning is now in effect in Sector 1. Please avoid traveling alone and remain armed. Stay alert to your surroundings at all times.
Well, we'll probably be fine. Now, I can't remember exactly how long the load times were for things like that on the Wii, because I'm playing on the Wii U, but I think this game loaded relatively quickly for this system. If anything, this game, again, very technically impressive for the Wii and what they managed to pull off. It's just that there's a lot of clunk in there, because something I haven't mentioned is I have recorded this off my Wii U, of course, but my other laptop that I used through college is positioned in a position that blocks playing the Wii easily, the Wii sensor bar in particular, so I need to, like, slightly stand up whenever I go into first person. So if it looks like there's a forced first person segment and I'm, like, taking a second, it's because I have to stand up. And you'll know whenever the Wiimote's off screen in a first person segment because the footage turns green. Because it's not paused, but it's trying to give you time to be like, hey, you're not pointing at the screen. Correct that, please. By and large, any hazards like this can be solved with missiles. Missiles and bombs are your major traversal item in this game. Hello, this is a new mini-boss type. This is I think it's Galmanian, and it's dead. They're chameleons, so they can turn invisible, but you can stun them by looking around in first person for them, because you will still be able to lock onto them and shoot a missile at them. At that point, you can either overblast them, or when they're stunned on the floor, you can run directly into them for what's known as, I want to say it's called a final strike. We'll learn the name of that later on. It's an instant kill move. If you enter that animation, they're just dead. With that said, you might have noticed that enemy introduced itself by attacking you. In a lot of cutscenes where you don't have control, you might want to be actively tapping the D-pad for a sense move anyway, because there's times where the game surprises you with an attack to introduce an enemy type like that, which is dickish. I don't like that. It looks cool when you pull off the sense move, but... And I should note, the game doesn't teach you something about sense move. You can also sense move out of the way of enemy attacks in first person, but you can't use the D-pad to do it because you can't move while in first person. You need to shake the Wiimote to do it. I'm not sure if you need to shake it in a certain direction, like if you shake it to the left, you'll move left or something. I seldom do it. Usually I'll just tank the damage anyway, because with the defensive upgrades we get throughout the game, partnered with the amount of health you can get, I feel while enemies do more damage by endgame, I feel I can usually survive enough to just tank a few hits here and there. So, of course, as we touched on last part, whenever you reach a navigation booth now, you're going to get the map. But it doesn't give you the map of the whole area, it just gives you the next chunk of the map. It usually will give you until either the next navigation booth they want you to hit up or something of that general regard. If the game was more exploration-focused, I'd probably be angrier at that than I am right now, because finding the map was part of what Metroid was. It was either making your own or finding the map room. Barring Zero Mission, which gave you chunks of the map at a time, and even then you could skip those a lot of the time if you just didn't choose the Chozo statue. And Fusion, which gave you a admittedly similar chunk of the map. I think the big difference is those games still had hidden rooms you couldn't find through the map room. Whereas this, there are some hidden rooms, but either they're marked by another map room, or they're just for a one-off item that doesn't really do too much. This game's linearity is very striking from the start. I generally don't mind it, because at this point I'm just grown Noldor in some regards. And this game was trying to be something different. Next mini-boss type enemy is the Griptions. They will roll at you, but you can stun them out of that with either a charge shot or a missile, at which point you can do a lethal strike just to take them out like that. You can also just jump on them to do over blasts, but I generally find going for the lethal strikes to be the more effective approach just because it kills them quickly. I think Samus's combat here has a nice base for a good action game, but I feel because it's entirely based around the beam cannon and the missiles, I don't want to say missed the mark, but they needed more to do with it. Because this is like, say, if Devil May Cry, loosely, was entirely based around a gun. And gunplay is important in Devil May Cry, but you also need to use your melee attacks to make good combos, to keep your stage rank up, to get more upgrades, or just to take care of enemies more smoothly. Samus needed more to do in this game, is what it comes down to. And admittedly, you do get more combat stuff as you go through. Whether or not those attacks are actively useful depends on which enemy you're fighting or what the upgrade is. But oh well. That missile tank is required, by the way, because we need to get down to here to progress with plot, because the door north in the previous room or two was just completely locked. Breeding room. Guess we'll just go through this door.
The large cage-like booth looked like something had been raised in it. And in one corner was the miserable form of a researcher's corpse. This victim hadn't sustained the same injuries. The dead I'd seen had been torn apart by something large. This one had been attacked by a different type of creature. And as I studied the violence this creature had wrought, I felt something in the air, the presence of a dark intelligence.
I always found that line weird and hokey. And there's a lot of those in this game, don't get me wrong. Some of the lines they gave Samus and Adam in particular in this game are like, what? And they come off like they're written for a light novel, which in some regards this game plot really feels like. It gets weird. Now we can head back to the main room, but we can't at the same time because we need a super missile to break this, and those aren't authorized yet. So we need to come in here. The authorization system for power-ups, I think, is bad. I agree with the general consensus there, especially when it comes to certain very egregious examples. Because I understand wanting the power bombs off throughout most of the game, because A, they're broken when you get to actually use them, but B, as Adam brought up, those are the most dangerous thing in our arsenal. But things like just the basic bombs and missiles which we need for traversal, defensive upgrades, why? Why are those limited in any regard? Time for another forced first-person thing. This one's a bit harder, so you need to look for a plant that's vibrating just off to the left side. It's a Pokemon!
Samus, proceed through the hatch I just unlocked. Your next destination is a little further ahead.
I love that little thing's design so much. It's adorable. Alright, so you ran away just to be like, hey, wait a second. Come back and stare at us? Okay, little thing. Okay. So, this room in particular generally highlights how a lot of rooms in this game are going to work. As, while they're not only just usually going to be thinner hallways with maybe an offshoot here or there, there's going to be enemies that just spawn in from the sides, usually a lot of the bug-type enemies or things like Screes from Zebus in some cases. But you might find you can't quite proceed yet, because you need to find a particular item to turn off either a lock or make a door visible. In this case, we need to crawl up here where these little bugs are coming from, which I believe are meant to be the bugs that could crawl onto you in Zero Mission, maybe, and turn off this thing. This is, I believe, meant to be like just like a hologram generator. It makes the door visible. Why we couldn't enter the door through the hologram, I do not know. But that's going to be the structure of a lot of rooms in the game, even if it's not exactly turning off a hologram projector. If it's not that, it's usually just bombing something to find the door or killing all the enemies. Need to backtrack for that missile tank, though, because otherwise you're going to be coming back here. Well, you're not coming back here for a while, is what it comes down to. In fact, I don't think, barring maybe a certain cleanup section later on, you need to come back to this set of rooms until maybe the very end of the game, even. There is one instance you need to backtrack for, but we'll get to that later. I love this room, but I don't know why. This room always just stuck out to me. It had some form of personality, maybe it's because it's one of the only sources in the one of the only parts of the game that has like a waterfall like that, and it's just pretty. And not for nothing, the water in this game looks good when it's moving. always something behind the waterfall. Also, you may have heard it there a little bit. There is a cooldown on shooting missiles, which is why I recommend doing the little jump trick to make so you can shoot 2 closer together and then fire a third one off at the usual timing from there. I think that's because they don't want you spamming missiles to be your main combat mechanic, because they want you to deal with, like, sense move, overblasting, lethal striking. And that is also fast, but sometimes missiles just do more damage, especially as we upgrade them throughout the game. With that said, I'd argue this is the first room that can really kill you on a first run, and even on repeated runs. Because now that we've activated that, or deactivated that hologram projector, this Dragotix stands up, as well a couple of side hoppers will spawn in. And the thing is with the side hoppers, A, their shockwave is surprisingly big when they jump. But they highlight a problem with Overblast that is only really noticeable when you try to spam it over and over again. There is a slight cooldown or HP threshold for Overblast to actually activate again. Sometimes you can't just spam it over and over again. And the Dragotix is meant to just be walking down to attack me, but got a little stuck in that elevator shaft. And because of that, I can just spam missiles and take it out pretty easily. That enemy, though, it'll do a lot of big swipe attacks, either trying to lunge at you or swinging its tail mouth at you. We only fight like 2 or 3 of them in the game, though, so they're not too big of a threat. Now, it's important to notice that Samus is aiming towards the left there. That's because there's some, I think those are meant to be the gamers, just stuck in a little shaft down there. And that's important, as that means you can get down there as well. So, after we Morph Ball, we can just place a bomb or find the correct panel, because I can never remember where the panel is. There it is, to find a missile tank. Again, there's a lot of missile tanks in the game. I think we maxed out around 90 missiles, so at 1 per, that's most of the game's items. Because there's not too many energy tanks or energy parts or the item we haven't found yet in the game. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're going to be progressing further through Sector 1, slowly approaching whatever our active objective is in this area. We know it's going to be that next save room over there, but there's a lot in our way before we get to that. See you guys then.